Welcome to the Bitcoin for Business podcast put on by Sovereign. I am one of the individuals who hosts weekly or bi-weekly interviews with various people in the Bitcoin community, the business community, or just sort of alternative space. And today I have with me a very special guest, Ben Justman from Peony Lane Winery. I'm saying that right, Peony Lane?
Yes, you are.
Uh, So I met Ben back in November. I had seen him on various social media platforms and was actually going out to Colorado to visit some relatives of mine and noticed that Ben's winery was about an hour away from where I was going to be staying and asked him if he would be interested in hosting my wife and my aunt and uncle. And Ben was super gracious to host us. He had us out there. He had some delicious wines for us. Wonderful charcuterie board, and we kind of just hung out for the afternoon, drinking some great wine, eating some nice meat and cheese, and as Bitcoiners are wont to do, talked about all sorts of things, and have been buying Ben's wines for friends, for family. Every one of them loves them. If you guys haven't tried his wine, I highly recommend it. It's incredible wine. He really rejuvenated me into drinking wine again. I kind of stopped drinking wine because I noticed I'd always get a headache. I'd always feel inflamed. I'd always have a hangover even after a glass of wine. And I just kind of just said, screw it, I'm not doing this anymore. So I told Ben our story about how we were about to have our first child and would love to have a bottle of Satoshi's Reserve. And Ben informed me that there were only three left, but with a story like that, he would have to sell us one. And so this is the finished bottle, the evidence that we did consummate the birth of our firstborn. So Ben, thank you very much for your generosity on that and on the day you had us out. And so I'm super excited to have you on and just wanted to talk to you about your Bitcoin journey, how you got into Bitcoin, how you've integrated it into your business, and not only how you've integrated into your business, but what brought you to the point where um, you got to the point where you understood Bitcoin and you were like, holy cow, I need to have this in my business. I need to start integrating this and why. So I'll let you go.
Yeah. So I would say just every part of my story is kind of just serendipity to a degree. I to start, I guess, on the background of the winery is I grew up on a farm where my dad's life goal was to retire and grow all his own food. And after cutting down a bunch of apple trees that weren't really worth the energy to farm anymore, he got convinced to plant some Pinot Noir. And that right after that, the movie Sideways came out, and basically as soon as our production started going, Pinot Noir demand was kind of ripping in the United States, and my dad started making wine in the sense of like he wanted to grow all his own food. He's going to start making wine. So we did that for probably, I guess a decade plus, and a few years in that he started selling it, had some success, but ultimately like my dad built houses his whole life and just wanted wine to drink. But I kind of noticed that there was a few sommeliers that really liked his wine, and knowing my dad not really having a sense of taste or smell or a taste for the finer things, that was a bit surprising. I didn't take it for much. And then when I was 25, I was really struggling as a geologist and needed a career change, needed to really bet on myself, and hadn't ever really thought of ramping up the winery. But it was kind of all sitting there for me as like a hobby winery to take over and scale up. And so I kind of just said, screw it. I hate my job. I need to do something that's betting on myself. And my dad will teach me how to make wine. And so I invested my life savings into grapes and started making wine. And like 2 hours in, I realized my dad had no idea what he was doing. So I was going to have to figure this out on my own. And
Did you
with
sample your dad's wine prior?
It was good. Yeah, no, that's the thing. Is like my dad made solid wine. Some years
Okay.
were better than others, but ultimately, like he was just winging it. There was no, there was. This
Yeah.
is the process, but like I don't know anything else other than these like few steps. And so that set me up, and then I have to learn the details within that. And then I had basically a year and a half, 2 years to wait. And like I said, I hated my job. I was commuting 5 hours to build, to make wine. And there was a bit of like, it was kind of once a month at the time. So it wasn't too crazy after the actual crush the first year. So I had this year to kill kind of while I was waiting for to start this thing that I committed my rest, the quote unquote rest of my life to, or at least my life savings, and decided to move back home. My dad wanted to build a house on another part of his property. And so I built that with him. And when I moved home, I moved in with a guy who I grew up with, who I considered like one of the smartest people I knew. And he happened to be a Bitcoiner. And so in just talking, he got me to start looking. And once I started looking, it really sucked me in. And so a year after that, I moved into the house and I got tired of him knowing everything before me. So he knew everything before me because he was on Twitter and I was reading Reddit and Cointelegraph. And then I got on Twitter. I just started kind of learning and being a bit of a loudmouth. I started posting what I was doing, and Bitcoiners just started kind of noticing and asking if they could buy my wine in Bitcoin. And at that point, yeah, I was into Bitcoin already, but I was also in a spot where I was like, I'm not going to turn down a sale. I'm not getting any like online sales. I don't really want to go online. Wasn't really a thought of mine. I was just doing farmers markets. I was going to open up a tasting room. And it was just kind of this gradual increase over, I guess, the course of 4 years now, where Bitcoiners increasingly just kept asking to buy my wine with Bitcoin. And as a Bitcoiner, I want more Bitcoin. So it was an obvious yes. This past summer was my last summer doing farmers markets, and I was like I said, farmers markets were a way to get out tasting, give people a chance to taste my wine, sell it to them, obviously, and it's a huge amount of people come in. I'm selling to tourist places like Aspen and Telluride, and so high dollar people willing to pay a premium for good low intervention wine. But that was really sucking my soul, a lot of driving and everything. So this past fall was kind of, I saw the writing on the wall and I was like, I need to take this next step. And all throughout last year, online sales just kept happening through Bitcoiners. Things just kept naturally growing to the point where once farmers markets ended last September, I knew that I just had to be done and I had to figure out a way to just get all my sales online. And there's been a bit of dabbling back and forth. I just did an event last weekend selling to non-Bitcoiners, and it's just like we'll get into details here, but at this point, it's just so clear to me that for my business, the only people I want to sell to, the only people I actually want to try to sell to are Bitcoiners. And there's enough of a mass of people that want to buy my wine either with Bitcoin or not. But a big part of it is because I'm a Bitcoiner, because I'm one of them, for various different reasons, that's enough to run my entire business through. So
That's awesome. I mean,
that's running no ads. That's like no customer acquisition. That's just, I've found this like insane group of people who want to support me because I'm on the same mission as them.
I will definitely say a lot of it has to do with the quality of your product. But to to that point, it's I've noticed that as I buy stuff from Bitcoiners, I notice the quality of the product is way better. I bought all sorts of stuff, and every single time, I know the product is going to last. I know it's going to taste good. I know it's well done. Whatever I'm buying, and it's like I would rather spend my Bitcoin to get a super high quality product that I know is going to be high quality because the type of person that is in Bitcoin today, I know they're high integrity. I know they care about quality. They understand proof of work. Now, in 10 years, 15, 20 years from now, that probably won't be the case. It'll just be money and it'll be like any other product. You're going to have to find the good ones. But right now, we're in this awesome period of time where you get to self select the best products, and you just have to see who's accepting Bitcoin, and you basically know, okay, well, I'm going to buy my cow from that guy. I'm going to get my beef from that rancher. I'm going to get my art from these people. I'm going to get my wine from this person. I'm going to get my vegetables at the farmer's market from the guy that takes Bitcoin, and it's pretty awesome.
So I think it's important to talk about why that is a little bit because it's not just that
Absolutely.
they figured out Bitcoin. I think we're sniffing our own butts a little bit if we just say it's because they have this low time preference. Bitcoiners are more full of integrity. Bitcoiners are just like better people, which I'm not saying. I think we've experienced it to a large degree. But I think the important thing when it comes to business with that is twofold. One, if you expect people to part with their Bitcoin, you better have a damn good product because Bitcoiners
100.
really value their Bitcoin. I guess there's three things. Never number your list. Also, uh, Bitcoiners
No
are
number.
really good at Bitcoiners are really good at smelling scams. We've been through years and years and years of whether it's lending that has gone awry, scam coins. Like, there's so many things that Bitcoiners are incredibly good at smelling scams about, and that flags it to everyone. It's a small, tight niche community that I think is like small, as in we're all kind of together. We look for each other, and that third thing flags for everyone else. So you get this major like you have to have high quality. People are looking for scams, and everyone's pretty connected. So if someone makes a bad product, you hear about it. If someone's not reaching Bitcoiners, you hear about it. And there's this really interesting time. You talked about like in 10 years, this might be different, but we're talking about right now is this amazing time for any business that has no competition. Like there's no one else in the Bitcoin world doing what you're doing. And if they are, they might still be small. You still have a chance. You can be the Bitcoin whatever you do guy. And that's like it seems small and it may be like mine is it's my entire business now, but and that doesn't have to be for everyone, but every business could benefit from this insanely loyal, increasingly wealthy niche customer base that grabs onto you just because you're into Bitcoin. And remember, we said they're really good at smelling scams. So you can't just do it. You have to have a bit of knowledge behind it. You have to have done some work and you have to be a decent steward of their Bitcoin. If you're saying, no, I'm just going to sell it, or we also hold ETH and like we're not values aligned because people are spending Bitcoin to push Bitcoin forward as well as to boost themselves, as well as to hope that I like this business, I want them to succeed, and I can give them the best money possible for this in order for them to succeed, for me to buy their wine in 10 years. Those are the things that Bitcoiners are looking for, and if you can match that, if you can have a high integrity product with a bit of knowledge behind it, if you just orient yourself as pro Bitcoin, they'll come to you.
Absolutely. And I almost respect the people that just take fiat more than the people that take Bitcoin but immediately just have it converted to dollars because they're just out there fishing for some other market segment that they're not actually looking to keep a customer for life, repeat business necessarily. That they're kind of just like, okay, well, I guess if people have this other money, they might spend it on me, as opposed to fostering a relationship. And I mean, I know on with me and you, we've had a relationship now where I can text you, say I texted you earlier and I said, when's the next subscription coming? And okay, here's what's coming on. And it's you actually are able to have a relationship with your customers. I bought some art from some people and I talk to them now and like to see their work. And I have other people I shared. Recently went down to Florida to visit some friends. We stayed with some friends, and as you know, we sent some wine down there to thank them for hosting us and to enjoy while we were down there. And immediately they had it, and now they're Bitcoiners as well, and they're like, "Wow, okay, this was really, really good. Now I'm in on this." And I wanted to do that. I wanted to share your wine with our friends because I knew it was a high quality product. I knew they would appreciate it, and I could feel good about it. And it was like, here's someone else I want to open your business up to. And that sort of grassroots community and opening up of possible avenues for business. I just don't see that too much in other industries. I don't know, what is your have you sort of seen that in your experience where it's like, okay, this one person, I met them, they bought something, and now I see sort of a web of people that have spawned off from this one center point, that has had a um, customer relationship with me.
Absolutely. I think your example is just your like. I say this in no bad way to you, but like you are the typical Bitcoiner in this, and that's. I
I'm
just
happy
want to
to
make
be
one
a real part of
clarification.
it, you know.
I just want to make one clarification within this is like us being able to have a relationship. That's not unique to Bitcoin. That's a small business thing. You're able to talk
Yes,
to the producer.
for sure.
What you described, what you did, hits on a very important point. Going back to the first thing you said, where if you just accept any, let's say, any crypto and expect to have this relationship, you can't. One, crypto people aren't necessarily looking to spend their crypto. They are probably looking for gains and generally are not in the same, like, we're in this movement to change the world. We're trying to make a better world that Bitcoiners have. If you, there's a common thing of like, just, oh, I just want to accept any money that people have. I talk to entrepreneurs all the time. And that's their first inclination. And you have to explain, like, no, you have to be values aligned with these people or they don't give a fuck. They're just
Yep.
going to see you as another business that's trying to get their money. What Bitcoiners want is a valued exchange, not a sale, not a purchase. It's they want this win-win trend, like it's not a transactional experience. And so what I get is obviously a sale. I get Bitcoin. I also get a relationship because I actually do care about relationships with Bitcoiners. And any small business could care about their customers. But we have this extra connection piece, this drive that's bringing us forward to make the world better. Additionally, I think that there's this serious drive of like, okay, cool, I bought some Bitcoin. I want to see the world move forward. And a big thing that I don't see is I can't buy a bunch of things with it. And you can more than you think if you start looking. But it's definitely this like, this is this one last thing I need to prove to myself that Bitcoin is kind of in this stage becoming money. Like we're seeing it on the global stage, but like, can I actually buy stuff with it? Can I live on it if I need to? And the answer to that is increasingly yes, but you need to test it yourself as a Bitcoiner. You need to try buying things, see what it's like. And also it's a bit of like a, yo, am I crazy? Are Bitcoiners like crazy people? Or did I just buy the best bottle of wine I've had in a long time? Like
Yeah.
that's a point. And also, I think that when you're talking to your friends and family, because this happens to me too, I'm a typical Bitcoiner in this way, where it's like,
Not enough people are
hey,
willing to admit they're in the middle part of the bell curve, you know. Everyone's like, "Oh,
everything,
I'm left brain." A lot of us are
all
in
the
the
big
middle.
trends are like, I'm like, oh, wow, cool. I like to think I'm different, but I just fell in the middle of that. That's describing me, the typical person. Um, but everyone wants to like talk about Bitcoin. I think we go through phases as Bitcoiners to like go crazy and want to shill everyone, and everyone needs to buy Bitcoin. And you kind of do that for me, it was a few years. For some people, a few months, and you realize no one wants to hear about it. It's kind of just ostracizing. But you get to say, hey, we're having this nice bottle of wine. Your friend says, oh, this is really good. Where'd you get it? Oh, I bought it with Bitcoin. Bitcoin conversation came up. Boom, checkmate. And it's kind of just this like real thing that you can point to anyone that you care about in your life. That's this Bitcoin isn't just this magical internet money. It can get me tangible things. But one last point is that this is not all about spending Bitcoin. I've totally wanted to rephrase this conversation. This is not all about spending Bitcoin. Yes, that's a big part of it, and I think ultimately it pushes if you're buying something and looking to vote with your money, it's the strongest vote. However, I don't give a discount for Bitcoin. I don't charge more for fiat. Ultimately, like I probably get paid more Bitcoin than I should reasonably hold on to on a percentage basis. And I've just kind of that's just a decision I've made as a business owner who realizes that like all I want to accumulate is Bitcoin. I understand that you also have to pay your suppliers in dollars and all this other stuff. So like it's really hard to completely exit the matrix. This is not about only receiving 100% of your sales in Bitcoin. Bitcoiners massively support other Bitcoiners with dollars. Everyone's in their different stage. Some people are accumulating, some people are kind of in the middle and like to spend and replace, some people like to spend their stack, but ultimately, this is not about specifically accepting Bitcoin. That is the olive branch to Bitcoiners, as well as saying we're kind of mission aligned. But if we're speaking to a business owner here, the idea is reaching Bitcoiner customers, and accepting Bitcoin as an olive branch. And like I said, you have to have all these things: high quality product, connection, on the mission, be a decent steward of the Bitcoin, ideally. But ultimately, it's reaching this customer base of Bitcoiners who want a tangible connection to their goods. They're extremely loyal and they're extremely like perceptive to rooting out scams and finding high quality goods. And that is ultimately what you described of yourself, Brandon, is the ultimate customer. Dude, I bought your wine and I just shilled it to my friends and they loved it. From anyone, any customer, like any business is looking for that customer, that militant person that's like, "Oh my god, all my friends need to try this." And Bitcoiners are those people if they fully align with the brand.
Yeah, I'm going from the Bitcoin guy to the wine guy in my group of friends. They're like, "Who is this crazy person?" But no, I'm kidding. No, my dad loved it too. We after we had visited you, we went. It was the week of Thanksgiving. We went over to his place for Thanksgiving. We had about 15 of my extended family there, and um, opened one of your I think it was the Merlot, and he was blown away. He was like, "Wow, this is really good. I've never tasted wine like this." And he's a bit of a wine snob too. And I said, "Yeah, it's all natural ingredients." He's like, "You paid for this with Bitcoin?" And I did, yeah. So it's all about getting that out there, and so that's sort of one aspect of Bitcoin in your business is finding a target audience, people that are values aligned, that appreciate high quality, and also the ability to pay in it. I love it because I'm an on zero guy. I don't really have dollars. If I have dollars, it's on a credit card. It's literally negative. I'm in debt now. Um, uh, but more than just sort of being able to be accepting of Bitcoin, and that is the longer term aspects of it. I mean, something like wine is so seasonal, it's so dependent on the weather, especially if you're not using pesticides and preservatives. And for people that don't know where Ben's located, he's in a very volatile climate, I will say. Probably is an understatement of where he's at. And so, talk a little bit about how Bitcoin being on your balance sheet as a treasury asset, if you will, how that kind of helps you prepare for the future, maybe helps you sleep better at night. Maybe I'm putting words in your mouth and you don't sleep well at night at all. But sort of allows you to have this longer term framework and plan for the future and changes in weather and seasons and disruptions.
Totally. It's a more complicated answer for me than I wish it was. And part of that's because I'm kind of the typical person who got in at the top of last cycle. And I at least had enough research that I didn't sell at the bottom or get scared. It hurt. It was a pretty dark time to go all in at both 60K highs and then drop down to 15, especially after like all the telling people to buy it I did. So it was quite humbling in that regard. Wine, and when I was learning about Bitcoin, building a house that I knew I was going to like raise my kids in, that all of this kind of set me up to have this longer term approach. And I wouldn't say that I like basically I've financed the Bitcoin that I've been able to hold through debt, and I've been able to justify that debt because I have wine in the future that I'm going to sell. I have so many assets in the wine stored up
Sure.
that are going to get increasing in value, increasing in value, but also increasing in dollar value. That I can justify it. But I
Yeah,
would say that
working capital production cycle. I mean, yeah, I mean that's
sure, yeah.
pretty. Yeah.
Um, I've only recently really had an increase in value in the Bitcoin, probably this past year, where it's gone above my cost basis in a meaningful way. So there's been a lot of waiting on it, and I think that you definitely have to have that approach in Bitcoin. I mean, if you expect to get rich quick, a very lucky few do, and those people are, in my opinion, more susceptible to losing their Bitcoin in the future because they didn't learn the hard way early on. So I think what it's allowed me to do is kind of step back, and here's where it's interesting to me. A little bit less on the like what it's done for me and tangibly, and more in the kind of mindset and looking forward what it's doing for me. I know that the dollar is going to go down in value. I know that the grapes I buy are going to go up in value. I know that all of their inputs, glass, cork, everything is going to go up in value or up in price. So
Up
that
in
means I
cost.
have to continuously, yeah, up in costs. So my costs are continuously going to go up. That means I have to continually raise my prices and also continue advertising. And in that price raising, I'm constantly squeezed because I'm up here, my costs are increasing, but we know that my customers are not likely increasing their wages based off of the inflation. They're not keeping up. So my margin is constantly getting squeezed. And I'm speaking to people who are opting out of the system just like me. So I see every step of buying Bitcoin, every little Bitcoin I buy is me taking one tiny foot to slow down the hamster wheel and get off the fiat hamster wheel of constantly costs increasing, having to raise my prices over and over and over. And just slowing it down a little bit is massive. Having something outside of that is massive. Having the fastest horse in the race, as far as an investment perspective go, is incredible. And yes, I monitor the price, but ultimately, like I can sleep well knowing that Bitcoin itself hasn't changed. I don't have to really worry about that, even as much as I like to pay attention to it. So then you take that. That's how it's working for me. Now all my customers are also in the same boat. They've all gotten off the hamster wheel to a degree for them. So they're not their cost perception is not going to continually be getting closer to my cost of input. They continually stay above because they've also taken a step off the hamster wheel. So it helps me and it helps my customers, which helps me better serve my customers or at least be able to better survive. So, that's an approach I can take where I'm not really I don't run ads. Bitcoiners find me and tell other people. That's the most amazing thing a business can do
True
or
story.
can have as far as customers. And it's kind of this perfect thing for me. If you're a bigger business and Bitcoiners are just going to be a niche customer, they're your best niche customer. And that's an important thing to have as well.
Awesome. So, do you do you have plans for the future where you've kind of said, all right, I have this amount of Bitcoin, I'm going to put it away, and I want to do X, Y, and Z with it? Um, do you have anything like that, or not yet, maybe, or
Not a specific amount of Bitcoin. I mean, I have hopes and dreams for like what price does, but ultimately, like a lot of what that drawdown taught me is debt sucks, and if I can get out of debt, that'd be amazing, even if it costs me some Bitcoin, which in 10 years will be a horrible dollar for Bitcoin trade. But that feeling of freedom is pretty exhilarating, and I at least look forward to not have to approaching debt from a sense of power because I started this with no experience in really in business or in winemaking or in investing, and it's working out. But ultimately, like you kind of have to you take on debt to start a business, especially to start a capital intensive business, and riding
Yeah,
the Bitcoin
you're
waves, you kind of ideally want to cash out and get to a better place, at least take a step up, raise your foundation, ensure things, um, assuming things go down again, 80%, which is my base case. So that's my only goal is to shore up a foundation, ideally this year.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where you go from debt being a liability to debt being an asset, and
Hmm.
that's kind of where you're doing the Pierre Rochard speculative attack just on a or the micro strategy, Michael Saylor speculative attack just on a very micro scale within your business, as opposed to it being your seed capital, for lack of a better term, and you sort of being beholden to the holder of that. And I know Safe has talked quite a bit about it. We sort of shifted away from this equity funding of businesses to this debt funding of business, and it really has been a sad transition. I mean, it is unfortunate that someone in your situation has to sort of take out debt just to get off the ground to get going. And how how great would it be if the opportunities there were people had savings and wanted to invest in something, or even you had savings. I mean, I can't. I think back so much to. I mean, what if I just saved my money? I didn't get into Bitcoin until I was kind of in my 30s. So I was like, well, what if I spent my 20s saving my money in real money? And it's just like, man, how much earlier could I have come done something like Sovereign or gone out on my own and not been like, okay, I got to be on that hamster wheel, to your point. And that I also want to get back to something you were talking about because it's so critical. It's something I saw time after time in my whole life. For those that don't know, I worked in distressed assets for a financial institution for about 20 years. And what I increasingly saw at the end of my time was we were getting to a point, especially after 2020, especially after where they were lying to us, telling us there was 8% inflation, 9% inflation. It was 25 to 30%. I don't care what anyone says. Um, you can go back, look at all sorts of, trueflation, inputs, the actual cost of a steak at a restaurant. Look at all sorts of stuff. I mean, it was 25 to 30% a year. And what I noticed more and more, what you were talking about, Ben, where you're able to sort of match your cost to it, and your customer base is, well, um, these these businesses were unable to match their costs. And then they were going, holy cow, I have to increase my prices by 40%. And of course, all these businesses are backwards looking. They're, looking at March 31 numbers in May or something like that. And they're like, holy cow, we have a big problem here. And then the solution, like you said, is you have to pass that price increase along to your customer. And now you have customers going, I'm not buying at that price point. That's just too much now. I'm unable to do it. Whereas if it was something you really valued and you were saving your money in a better money, it would be no problem. You would just go, okay, yeah, I'm for me, my cost is very similar to what it was before, even despite the increased costs. And so I just wanted to circle back to that because that was a super important point that I just saw time and time and time and time again as sort of the end of my time in fiat land, where were these businesses really struggling to understand what was happening to them as they were being forced to raise their prices and then pricing themselves out of the market effectively.
Yeah, I mean, it's not anyone's fault if they
No,
can't
it's
keep up
not.
with inflation, and
Yep.
you as a business owner have to increase your prices to survive. And I think we all recognize that anything priced in dollars, the price will go up in dollars over time.
And
Everything
what's
is less scarce than dollars.
Yeah. And what's so sad is these business owners are ultimately the bag holders for themselves. Because they're losing on this inflation hamster wheel that they are unawares. They're the fish in water. They don't know they're in the water, and because of that, they're unable to see that they're actually losing their own business by just holding this inferior money. And it was excruciating. It was actually a big part of kind of what drove me to really step out of the fiat world and do what we're trying to do at Sovereign here, is to start educating these companies and talking to people like yourself and other people that have come to this realization and have figured this out. So um
Yeah, and I think a lot of businesses, I mean, more mature ones, you have a much more cash flow coming in, but um, especially when getting going, I think it's hard to be like, okay, well, I'm putting everything back into the business, but ultimately, I think you can say like, okay, if someone gave you $1 of Bitcoin, would you hold it? And you can keep going up, and ultimately, it's pretty. The tools are pretty easy if you just want to put something like 1% of your sales away into Bitcoin. And if you can do that, if you can just something tiny like that, that's those tiny steps off the hamster wheel. And in time, it'll be incredible. And you kind of learn to live without that money. You kind of learn to have that thing over here and figure out how
so
to make
true.
do. So it's just really important to get that first little bit and kind of start learning from there. And then if you can do that and potentially reach Bitcoiners, you'll really see the difference. That's a really tangible difference for business owners, is to get that experience with people who are opting out of this system and who are looking for these specific high quality, high trust goods, and businesses that treat them right. And I think that that's something that's like, for business owners, seeing Bitcoiners react, they're like, oh crap, this is amazing. Like, these people really they put up or shut up, and they're not all talk. Um, and that can kind of help you get off the hamster wheel a little bit more, both because they're maybe paying you in it, and it's easy to kind of keep, oh, I just traded some wine for this Bitcoin, I don't need to sell it right away. But also, you just kind of get this feedback of like, okay, these are good customers. Maybe they're just onto something. Let me just look at it a little bit more, as opposed to it being this like intangible magic internet money phenomenon that you just might lose all your money on.
And it's so crazy, right? These same business owners in their personal life, they're getting all this advice and okay, you've got to take your savings and you got to put it in the S&P 500 and 60/40 portfolio and whatever else. And it's like at the same time, you're not doing any of that in your business. You're not taking your extra cash. I'm not talking about reinvesting or capital investment or, putting money back into actual labor or things like that. I'm just talking about excess reserves that are building up in the times you are profitable and making money. And it's like if your sort of net cash margin, savings margin, whatever you want to call it, sort of net cash flow at the end of the day is 5%, and you're putting that in cash, that's wiped off the planet. That's gone. That is erased. And it's like, yeah, if you could, you do it in your personal life. You don't hold those in dollars. Cash is trash. You put it in something else. Well, we've entered this sort of weird period. I don't even want to call it a period, just it's sort of mindset that well, businesses shouldn't be allowed to protect themselves from debasement. That's only for you personally. That's why you get an investment advisor. And it's almost like just this fiat mindset has completely corroded the ability to think about actually having your money retain its value and not get debased, and protecting yourself from getting debased. And that is a huge part of the education and understanding that. And I just, once the light bulb goes on, I just have to imagine a lot of these business owners are going to start to figure out like, holy crap, I've just been getting destroyed. I need to start doing exactly what you're talking about, 1%, 2%, whatever it is. Just start putting a little away to protect myself. So
Yeah, I think it's coming slowly. Just the juxtaposition of, okay, I'm supposed to run a business profitably and then also invest in other people's businesses, when really I should just be running my life, my business properly, getting a profit, and I'm fine with saving money, and any money I want to invest, I'm going to invest back in myself. It's just kind of, I'm not was I had bought index funds before I found Bitcoin, but like, yeah, you buy stocks, you invest. But ultimately, just the if you take that to the root of, okay, supposed to start a business and then also use my business to fund investing in other people's businesses, just kind of doesn't sit right for me now that I'm like out of it, because I know that's just what you do and kind of what you have to do. But there's something freeing to just being like, oh yeah, I make money and I save that money in Bitcoin, and over time, over 4 years, it's going up. And if I can put that away and forget about it and not have to use it for another 4 years, I'm going to be in a better spot. But you can't really get to that point in a big way without, I think, touching it a little bit, doing a little bit at a time, and also just doing a ton of research. So ultimately, I kind of at this point just push people to buy a little bit, have it, watch it. You're probably like, I was really into personal finance, is why I dove into this so quick. I wanted to understand economics. I wanted to understand inflation, like from at 22, which is not for most people. I can't say I had a great understanding, but eventually I'm figuring some stuff out.
no,
But ultimately, like, people don't really do that. So like when I get my friends, I'm always like, hey, you bought this thing, can I pay you back in Bitcoin? I just want you to have a little bit because I know you're not going to care about it. I know you're not going to put your money into it. But if I just send it to you, if it's not a gift, if it's a pay you back, you'll have it for a little bit. And maybe in 4 years, you'll say, wow, that went up a lot. Maybe I should do some research. And I think that's the case if you just like put 1% tiny bit in, maybe someone buys with Bitcoin, you hold it. It just kind of takes time to seep in if you're not already super interested in it. And so many business owners are already so busy. Like,
they
there's,
are.
you just want to add another thing to my plate? No way. So if you can introduce it as a, hey, these Bitcoiner customers are pretty crazy. You probably want to make some, like, you probably want to make some connections there. And there's all these other things. Oh, and yeah, they'll pay you in Bitcoin, and it can go up over time. Like, there's all these things that line up, but it's, where's the entry point? How do we get you to care? Because you have so many things already on your plate.
And that's really what we're trying to do. A big part of this podcast is talking to people like yourself, is hopefully getting out to the broader business community and people that are running businesses that aren't necessary. That you're a perfect example. I mean, selling, buying wine has nothing to do with Bitcoin. It's just a product. You're just Bitcoin is your unit of account, and that's the mindset we really want to start helping to foster in the business community, that you don't have to do anything in Bitcoin. You don't have to be a coder. You don't have to make hardware. You don't have to, uh, uh, educate people about Bitcoin. You just simply need to make it your unit of account, or and getting that awareness out, and to hear stories of people like yourself and the success that has come with it. We're really hoping resonates with people, makes sense to people, and they're able to see Bitcoin for what it is. It's really a tool to take your business to the next level, to take your business into the future. And I always joke, I say, I don't want people to come back to me and thank me in 6 months. I want them to come thank me in 5 years and just say, wow, you really put me on the right path. You averted a disaster, and I'm starting to see the fruits of what you were talking about, what you would advise me on, what you consulted me on. And like you were saying earlier, I have friends that same thing. 4 5 years ago, I said, just buy a little bit. What take 1% of your net worth and put it into Bitcoin. And I set them up on a hot wallet. I said, let's just at least start there. Just don't hold it on the exchange. You don't have to go get a hardware wallet right away, but just put it on there. And sure enough, 3 4 years later, they look in that thing and they're like, oh my gosh, this has doubled, it's tripled, it's quadrupled. And just seeing that and just starting small, starting somewhere, and really over time. And it's crazy because you're stuck in the rat race. To your point, you're a business owner, you got 8 million things going on. Everything feels like it's got to be tomorrow, it's got to be next week, this is coming, this is coming, this is coming. But before you know it, you've wasted 4 years of running a business inefficiently because you weren't saving in the appropriate medium.
Totally. And that reminds me, just going back to a previous question, what has Bitcoin done for my business, especially in the looking forward kind of thing? And I deflected this a bit because Bitcoin hasn't done this for me yet in a tangible way, but it's allowed me to, in the mindset of building my business, change my approach. There's 10 other wineries in my valley and maybe 20 more, 25 more, about an hour away. And all of them are running obviously very different business models than me. Like I said, my initial plan was to kind of do what they were doing, stay relatively small, open a tasting room, hire people, sell wine locally, and that thus build up Colorado wine, which I think has a long ways to go as far as perception and just getting the word out there that it is good wine.
It is good. Say those that are skeptical or hesitant, give it a try. You will be surprised.
Thank you. So it's not just my wine either. Like I think I make great wine, but like there's a bunch of other wineries here that do so as well. Some that are making wine, whatever. Basically, what I'm getting at is in wine, there's kind of two different models with no middle ground, and basically you can either become a big winery or you can stay boutique. And there's nothing in the middle because you are not big enough to really benefit from your efficiencies of scale, and you are too too big to sell all your wine direct to consumer in a real way. So you just kind of get cut all over that way. So you're either big and you're selling mass market, low cost, or just distributing everywhere, or you're small and you're selling direct to consumer. That way, there's no middleman stealing your profit, and you sell a bit less wine, but you make more per bottle. And so, what I've been able to do is like even be on this, like in building this, it's where do I go? So, long term project, where do I go with this business? Okay, I don't think I'm ever going to be massive, but there's a long ways to go to be before I get too big. And what Bitcoin has allowed me to do is recognize that like my profits today matter. My profits today that I'm holding in Bitcoin will far outweigh anything I make in 10 years. No matter how big I get, I'm never going to make as much Bitcoin
That
as
is
I
crazy to
have.
think about, isn't that?
So if
Yeah.
I'm never going to make as much Bitcoin as I have now, I really don't take for granted the amount that what I've been able to save in Bitcoin now. And there's much less pressure to be like, I need to make way more money in the future because I kind of also recognize that that's impossible in Bitcoin terms. So it's allowed me to say, hey, this is my business. These are the things I like. These are the things I don't like. Let's just aim this business to be profitable towards the things I like. And it'll become what it becomes. But ultimately, it's aiming towards a sustainable, high quality production is all I want to do, something I enjoy, because increasing profits every year is impossible in my mind to a degree, at least over a 4 year rolling basis is. And it's really just what can I do to be sustainable for me and for the business to remain profitable and enjoyable. Because if you're making less money every year denominated in Bitcoin, you better like what you do.
Well, and I love that word sustainable. Sustainable was hijacked by all these psychopathic ESG people and everything, and it's turned into some sort of bastardization of the word where I don't even know what it means anymore. Like we need to reclaim sustainable. And the sustainable you're talking about is the literal definition of where it can sustain itself into the future. And that is such an important point because exactly what you're talking about, that for so long, the only way, unless you have incredible margins, unless you have some sort of super high margin business, the only way to survive has been to grow. And that growth can either entail, like you said, lowering your cost, more locations, getting away from the source, which that's not necessarily always terrible. And sometimes economies of scale, you're actually getting a better quality product at a lower price, and that does happen. Um, but more often than not, you're sacrificing on quality, you're sacrificing on touch, and and you're constantly, or excuse me, or the other way is you grow via an acquisition, attack on a whatever, and you're willing to go take on a whole bunch of debt, lever something up, buy it, or buy something and then lever that up, because that's the only way to rip more fiat dollars out of the the business. You're not able to sustain a profit. You're having to go find dollar cash flow in via other methods that aren't even profits. It's balance sheet manipulation via debt, effectively. And to and you know what? I feel for a lot of these companies because they're forced into that position. It's grow at all costs. It's we have to increase shareholder value, and we're not sustainable, um, literally sustainable enough to a point where we can generate our own increasing profits, put it back into the business, and continue to deliver quality stuff. We have to go all these other routes that are not the true ethos of the business or even what we want to be doing. We're just kind of pushed into it.
Yeah, the phrase "if you're not growing, you're dying" really comes to mind here.
Yes.
And additionally, you can't grow infinitely in a finite system, so you're gonna die. I guess that's life. But ultimately, you kind of want to just like me as an individual. I just sure there's some growth I still want to do, but ultimately, like, what do I want? I want a good life. I like running a business. I like making wine. I like what I do, and that all could change what I do. But ultimately, like, I just want to run something profitable and live a good life. And I think that that's a lot of people's goals. And yeah, maybe when you start a business, the goal is to get rich. But ultimately, I've kind of decided like if I want to live this life, and this is something Bitcoin's given me. I want to live this life where I enjoy what I do generally. I put in the work, have a good project, build something that kind of is tangible to the land I grew up on. My kids can see me doing it, but I don't have this like I'm gonna work my ass off and grow until I'm a billionaire. And most people don't have that. Some people are smart and make a decent amount of money. Some people just want to be a wage slave, and that's fine. But ultimately, like I've kind of put myself in this spot where Bitcoin's given me this way of like, look, if I get rich, it's because of Bitcoin. It's not because of this winery. This winery is a bit of a lifestyle business, even though it is like solidly profitable and it's a good thing. But
There's,
not all businesses have to be this. I'm going huge and I want to make a ton of money.
I mean, I think I think you're selling yourself short in that, yeah, maybe you don't want to end up, super wealthy or anything like that, but there's in running a profitable business, you should be able to have whatever level of comfortable life you want. That if you're providing
Mhm.
value and you're making less than your inputs, that back in the day, people would run businesses. No one had a 9 to 5. No one had a career. These things were unheard of. It was people did gigs, or they even something like a blacksmith or an electrician or something. They did it on their own time, 4 days a week, and then they were able to save their money in something that wasn't being debased, and they could go about having the life they wanted. And if they wanted to work more, they could work more. If they wanted to start their own business and try to get wealthy, they could do it. And not everyone succeeded, and there were failures, and people misallocated capital. Sure, that all happens. But the ability until Bitcoin came, there really, for the last 100 plus years, there hasn't been an ability to just take your time and energy, make more than you spend, put it somewhere, and then say, I'm going to be able to have the life I want because I provided someone value earlier. And so like I know what you're saying, that you don't want to end up to be some billionaire magnate, and that's great. But at the same time, we should all be able to afford lives of meaning and purpose, and have our needs taken care of by just offering more value than we're extracting. And I think there's something profound in that. And it sounds humble to say, like, okay, I don't want to be some super rich guy. But at the end of the day, our money should afford us that ability, to have that potential, because of, Jeff Booth talks about this all the time, the productivity of humanity. We like that all should be accreting to us as we go through our lives. So sorry, I went on a little bit of a
Absolutely.
tangent there.
No, that's I totally on point. I think that we've kind of had that power in just the sense of like, you work to buy a house, you work to invest in stocks, and ultimately, like that does all right. But we've kind of seen that that doesn't. That's a bit of a false narrative where it doesn't keep up with real inflation, as money printing, as well as we think. And so, what Bitcoin does is it kind of resets the baseline. It's obviously the fastest horse in the race as far as the investing goes, but it's something solid that doesn't change. That all things accrue to it, and or all money printing accrues to it eventually, and allows anyone to, yeah, save, do their craft, and live a good life. And there's a bit of like, yeah, okay, you're saying that because like, I mean, people think Bitcoin's expensive right now, but you're saying that because like you got in early at Bitcoin. And it's like there's definitely an element of that. There's 100% an element of it will happen faster for me because I got in Bitcoin earlier than anyone who's not in Bitcoin yet. Um, but what it ultimately does is, let's say, fully adopted Bitcoin, it ultimately allows you to save your earnings in something that's solid without
Yes.
taking risk. That's generally a slow grind upwards with human productivity in value, that allows you to just do what you're good at, do what you're called for, and work, save, live. That's ultimately like what all of us want to do, but you have to get into investing. You have to pick the right stocks or the right timing, or hopefully your pension does well, or hopefully you bought the right house and there's no big earthquake around you. And it takes so much risk out of the equation. And I mean, the risk in Bitcoin is literally just volatility right now. At least that's the main one, and that's spread out with time, man. So if you can just like take that low time preference approach and just say like, hey, I don't expect to get rich from this tomorrow. I just want to like, ultimately I have my goal. I want to live a good life. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing and saving in Bitcoin. My bet is that that ends up doing well, and historically that's been a great bet. So we're not to the point where you can just save in Bitcoin and every year it goes up 4% in value.
One
But
day it will,
if
though. So yeah,
absolutely, that's the bet. And if you get in, if you start learning about it now, and understand why it's important to hold Bitcoin now, you reap the rewards much more than someone who waits for all the risk to be gone.
yeah. And the volatility is the price of admission, and volatility does not mean risk. Volatility is volatility; it moves around. But over a long enough time frame, you know, I've found that framing Bitcoin, if you show people the log chart over 11 years. For some reason, that helps it click where it's just going like this forever. And yeah, it's leveling. Guess it is leveling out. Um, but at some point, I mean, it's still going to keep going up. I've seen some sorts of projections that even on this sort of decreasing power law, we basically have another 150 years of of outperforming sort of saving productivity baseline. And so um but at the end of the day, God forbid you just work and then save your money. like like yeah, okay, maybe you won't be able to buy half a coin and 4 years later be able to quit your job or something like as some people were, back in the day. But you will be able to save for you start working at 20 or 22 or whatever, you can save for 5 years and then you'll probably be able to buy a house. And then you can save for 10 years and then you can have and save for 5 years, have a family and a house. In 10 years, you can upgrade your house and have more of your family. And it's just like it will just go back to how it used to be. You just put your money away. Saving is a virtue, and you wait and lower your time preference and get the things you want. And it's no different. And I always it uh, there's all there was that like classic meme going around where it was like they took the government and then they reduced like 9 zeros off of everything and they're like this is what the government US government would be doing if it was a household. And then all these super big brained midwits were, oh, it's different with the government, you don't understand, it's not like running a household. It's like, no, it is like running a household, and it is like running a business, and it is like running a government, and it is like running anything that requires proper accounting. You're just going to have to be profitable. And the fact that we have a debt-based system that has skewed all of this is made us just ignore simple math and reality is so insane. And to be able to step out of that and like you said, be able to put money away, save for the future. um it just completely changes your framing as a business owner. And so one last sort of topic I wanted to explore with you, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, Ben, you've been very gracious already. But um one it sort of a multi-part question that all gets back to sort of the same thing. Do you plan on expanding your operations? And if so, would you incorporate potentially Bitcoin incentives or anything like that into it, or just kind of what's next steps for you? How do you see Bitcoin factoring in?
I'm kind of at an inflection point. As I said, I transitioned from selling in person to continuously, or just basically only focusing on selling online to Bitcoiners. To frame that, 3 years ago, my Bitcoin sales were 10% of my business. The next year, 50. Last year, 75%. So
Awesome.
I just gave up 25% of my business to focus highly on the 75. I think that 75 will put out more than what that 100% was with full focus. I am considering scaling down, actually. And part of
Love it.
that
Love it.
is, well, I don't want to scale up. That's
That's
one thing.
that's awesome, man. So many people get caught in that trap. I've watched more people scale up and crush themselves than I care to count. But anyway, sorry, cut you out there.
You're good. So here is my approach to wine production in the past. I don't know how big I'm going to be in 2 years when the wine's ready. I'm just going to make more than I did last year, and hopefully I'll grow into it. And I have overproduced. So,
If you're looking to
like,
unload some excess inventory, Ben, you got my phone number.
so, things are good. Business is profitable. I have a ton of wine, and I I lean towards. I think all the wine I make is good, but ultimately I know my special sauce is my estate Pinot Noir. What I grow here, what I grow personally, it's the most meaningful to me. It's the most represent. It's the only one I get from my vineyard. So I tell the best story with that. It's also, I think, the best wine and the most unique wine. Um, and I'm leaning towards just focusing on that, as well as a new block of Pinot that's coming up that I would probably start out with making a rosé out of, because you want a little bit older vines before you produce a really high quality red, especially for a Pinot. So my considerations with scaling down is potentially, partially, maybe I have too much product. Let's kind of see. I can always scale back up later. Partially just kind of workload. I'm doing this all mostly myself, and want to see,
Consider bringing
maybe
on
take
more
on some
staff?
other things.
Would you consider bringing on more staff or
I do have a guy working for me now, so I guess that's more than I've ever had. But
double? Yeah.
he's like, well, I mean, he's like part-time gig worker, not an employee by any means, just helping me in the vineyard. And there's a bit of that. I think, as more money comes in, it's like, well, I can offload some tasks. So like I said, I'm in this inflection point. I think when I was really, really considering scaling down, it was like just kind of, you go through these phases, mental ups and downs. I was like, man, I kind of want to be doing something else. And ultimately, I'm finding that a bit right now. I'm working on another kind of side project, a show where I talk to Bitcoin adjacent companies and kind of want to introduce them to Bitcoiners, traveling and kind of just having some fun with it. That's all going to be focused on Noster, trying to exit the
Uh,
matrix with that kind of
uh,
deal. So I'm kind of finding all these different avenues. I know that like just winemaking is not my calling. I like talking to people, and I don't like a real wine, like someone whose calling is to make wine is psyched on a 10-hour day where they don't talk to anyone and they just work with the wine all day. I want to be either working with people or like I want more diversity. So it's kind of just like I said, I want to create something that's sustainable, and part of that sustainability is me liking doing it. And if I'm all heads in the weeds, completely assumed, like totally enveloped in only making wine, that's not what I want to be doing. So Bitcoin kind of affords me this ability to branch out and see what I want to do, but also like I'm kind of one of the only people doing what I'm doing. So I think that there's a lot of things to say about it, and spread the word and hopefully bring other Bitcoin
Yeah.
businesses on board.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely are. I mean, I basically never heard or seen available anything like your product anywhere, certainly in the United States at all. So it's super cool to have found it, and I mean, you really did. Honestly, I truly mean this. After having your wines, I really have started pretty much drinking your wine again, and some other stuff from that I know is organic and know the vineyard and stuff and where it came from. But like that type of wine, it's just a completely different type of wine, and I'd encourage everyone to try it. You're not going to go back. I've since been offered other wines, and your typical whatever, got it in the grocery store, and they're just not good. And so I encourage everyone to try some of Ben's product. It's fantastic. Um, we the Cab Franc and the Cab Sauv, they pair incredibly well with beef. So I know a lot of you Bitcoiners like me get a whole cow and throw it in your freezer. Get some of Ben's cabs and enjoy them with a nice steak or some ribs or a brisket. But Ben, appreciate your time today. Why don't you tell people where they can find you, best way to sample some of your product and where you're at.
Yeah, so I make low intervention wine in Western Colorado, the highest elevation wine region in North America. And kind of what you're getting at, Brandon, is you don't have all the additives that make you feel bad. And it's cl- if I'm pitching my wine in kind of like a blunt way, I say you don't get a hangover. And it's both true and not true because alcohol is not exactly like incredible for your body. And if you're drinking, you're probably staying up late and it's messing up your sleep. So like, I'm not saying this is get out of jail free, but you notice it pretty instantly when you drink commercial wine that's made with a ton of additives. And if you follow me on Twitter at Ben Justman, I've been posting a ton of things about all the additives, kind of an inside view of the wine industry from my perspective as someone who didn't go to UC Davis and isn't normalized in all these additives. Like to me, wine is grapes in time, and I think most people perceive that and don't realize how many other things are in wine. And when you drink wine without all of those other things, without high sulfites, without make a purple, you just feel better. It's like it's a bit hard to describe. You got to try it. If you're not going to buy my wine, you look for low intervention wine. I usually buy French or Italian if I'm not drinking my own, and the level of like it's just a clean come down. You don't feel hungover the next day, and it's like you don't get a headache the next day. I guess is a hangover is a general term, but
It's a
it's
hundred
a it's
percent
a pretty
true.
amazing experience. It's a pretty amazing experience to like be able to drink and not fear in a big way the next day. It's really opened my eyes to how things work, how things are, all the bad things in so many different alcohols, and how I feel. It's not just this blanket. I drink, I'm going to feel hungover. It's really dependent on what you drink and how you're going to feel afterwards. So yeah, I'm mostly on Noster and Twitter, at Ben Justman on Twitter, and then you can find me Ben Justman at primal.net on Noster, and I've cross post to LinkedIn and Threads. If you are more of a LinkedIn or Threads user, you can see my stuff there. But ultimately, just trying to connect with other Bitcoiners and move this world forward to an orange future.
Yeah, come over to Noster and find Ben and find myself, and it's much better over there. We have a good time on Noster, and it's Peony, Peony Lane, Lane. And it's the website. I forget if it's Peony Lane or Peony Lane Vineyards .com.
PeonyLaneWine.com. I
Peony Lane.
ship all over the U.S.
Yeah.
There's a couple states like Utah that have weird liquor laws, but ultimately, all over the U.S. If you have any questions or issues, I'm definitely here to help and here to facilitate that. If you want to pay with Bitcoin, there's liquor laws that make it hard for me to get you to pay in Bitcoin, but you definitely can. I have a Bitcoin tab in the main section of my website on the top right. You'll see Pay with Bitcoin. That has a few Bitcoin specific packs. And if you're looking to make a custom order with Bitcoin, just DM me and I'll get you all set. If you go through the normal checkout, it's only fiat. I wish it was different. I would be so much more of a cypherpunk if alcohol regulations weren't a thing. But we are where we are, and pay however you want to pay. I'm not a crazy guy about that. I have bills to pay in dollars too.
Awesome. Love it. As always, you can come find us at Sovereign on X or on LinkedIn. I'm at Plebe Anon on Noster. No Twitter for me. Our founder, Daniel Frank, and on LinkedIn and on X as well. So, Ben, really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much, and always great talking to you, man.
Cheers, man. Thanks for having me.